Welcome to The Lost Signals discusses film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzar-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Lost Signals Reviews Film and Television. Welcome to our ongoing series of quarantine videos, but also in general in April, arbitrarily because of April Fools, we tend to do comedy films. And also because we just reviewed Mouse, we decided to go look at a similar tale that actually has a bit to do with the history of Mouse. American Tail, T-A-I-L,
of course.
Punny. The story of Fievel Moskowitz. I am your mutt of Europe, Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with an English stereotype, Scott Thurlow.
Hi there, mistress, and welcome to our show.
And our Hungarian immigrant, Stephen Ramosi.
Oh, hello.
And again, we're doing American Tail. And Scott, you have our funny luck line?
Yeah, so I prepared one that's... there are certainly cats in America, and the streets are bereft of cheese. That is the truth of the reality.
That is absolutely true. If only the poor immigrants knew that before coming here. All right, you're going on with plot, right?
And I also tell you thought, yes. So we start a mouse family, the Moskowitzes, as you mentioned, a heavily implied like Russian Jewish family in 1885 who are escaping the revolution happening there. And of course, they were all anthropomorphized mice, and the cats are the enemies, a la Mouse to a degree. And so they escape to America. They have a hard time, hardships on the immigrant shit coming in. Fievel gets separated due to disaster, and they get to New York separately. And it's basically him sort of being thrust into the American experience of the time and trying to reconnect with his family, encountering various stereotypical mice to some degree, and who are organizing a sort of rally, if you will, against the cats who do in fact exist in America, even though some were led to believe that it was not the case. So eventually they fight off the cats, and Fievel reunites with his family, and they are happily as ever after until sequel bait hook for Fievel Goes West, which we may or may not do. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. There's certainly a lot of analogies and symbolism, of course, in the film that we did not, and you would not have gotten when you were a kid, which we'll discuss in themes. But as it is, as an animated film from 1986, I think it holds up pretty damn well for the most part. I'm looking at a very strong 2, certainly, and I could go up to a 3, but that's about where I'm at now. So what do you guys make of it?
Yeah, so I think that this is a really interesting movie. I hadn't seen it in years and years.
Yeah, same.
And I was kind of glad that you suggested it, Ian, because it's one of my favorites from childhood, and I was interested to see if it holds up. And I thought it held up pretty well. It was a fairly strong narrative. You get like this at the same time, like a fish out of water story coupled with a like have to find your lost family story. And I thought at the beginning of the movie that Fievel's voice was going to really bother me after a while, but it did, it never actually got to that point. And I thought
actually
that,
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that
maybe a couple of the songs did.
Screams were the worst part. The rest was fine.
But I thought that this did a really good job of telling his story, going from plot point to plot point really quickly, actually, without
it moves along nicely,
without making it seem like it was rushing. So yeah, I'm going to give a pretty strong. I think I'm going to give this a 3 actually for a plot.
So it's fascinating watching this with the knowledge I have now. This is a treat for history buffs because they discuss so many. They bring up Tammany Hall. They bring up registering dead people to vote for corrupt politicians.
Yeah,
there's all these little elements that whoever wrote the script of this knew what they were talking about. And for a kids movie, it has a lot for adults going
For
in.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that I loved Fievel meeting all, even though they are kind of stereotypical, all the different other types of immigrants, the shared experience of oppression that they all faced. I love that aspect of this film. I didn't quite care for the whole build the mouse of Minsk.
Sure.
And,
Well, I mean, that's classic animated shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like oddly enough, I felt I guess it's needed for a children's movie,
Yeah.
but it detracted from the story overall. I was more interested in him progressing through the
Various sectors.
the underworld and beyond the streets. I would have much more like a Dickensian approach to American Tail, but I still think it's strong where it's very strong. So I'm going to probably give it a solid 2. But
I think I'm gonna stay there. It's a very strong 2, solid as hell, but it's not quite a 3. But I also see that why you're giving it a 3 as well, Steve-O. It was somewhat close, but I think again somewhat blunted what you said. Like, yeah, because of that, like seeing it as an adult and through all like the knowledge that we have, it can somewhat detract, but still very strong too. So
I'd actually be considering how much they do go into historical and then like just give little hints towards historical things. I'd be interested to know if the Mouse of Minsk came from something that happened in real history.
it's probably a reference for sure that just we don't know. Yeah.
And what that would be. I tried to do a really quick search for it over here, but I didn't find anything, within 3 seconds.
Sure.
But
it probably is. Yeah, you're right. It certainly can be.
I think that this film, I think you're right, Ian. That's a big part of why I liked it, is it does really go in on talking about American history from the perspective of the immigrant, of the people that are coming here from, especially from Europe, but really like just the immigrant kind of experience. And
Yeah, exactly.
I think that that's part of what makes this a really strong film.
What's funny is my family, this would be my great-grandparents, they left from Hamburg, Germany, out to America. So they literally left at the exact same port they left from.
It was very historically accurate.
Very neat to me to see
That's
that
great.
Yep.
World.
All right,
Nice.
but I'm gonna stick with a 3 there.
Yeah, it's cool. All good.
All right, we'll continue talking, Steve-O, with themes.
Okay. Well, I think we even started this discussion just a moment ago, and we're talking about one main theme is definitely the immigrant experience of America. There's this really distinct voice that this film has because it's done in the like fish out of water kind of thing, but with somebody who is basically an orphan throughout most of the movie until he gets his parents back, right? So like he comes into America with nothing and really gets exposed to like all these different aspects of culture. I thought it was really interesting how Gussie, the like rich mouse from Uptown, and what was the name of the politician?
Honest John.
Honest John.
Obviously.
You like knowing what I know now about movies, I thought for sure, like I didn't really remember their, what happened between them. I thought for sure they would be a lot more antagonistic towards each other than they end up being. I love that, like
The mice unite, man.
I love that she like wasn't the obvious trope of like a rich, uptowner who just didn't want to get their hands dirty or anything. Like when she saw that there was an actual threat to them, she went in and actually, fought.
Sure.
Which I wish more rich people would do in real life. But yeah, I don't know. So like, I think that there's a lot going on in this movie, and probably even more than most people realize, and maybe even more than I realize. Like I watching this again made me kind of want to watch it again and like try and catch those little nods to history that maybe I missed or things like that. Or do a little reading about it. So I think there's a lot in there, but what do you guys think?
Well, I think very pertinent to our day and age is the idea of what you brought up with class solidarity and the working poor getting together to. Granted, I am a socialist. I'll fully admit that, and there's heavy socialist themes throughout this of
J. Ian Mouser
fighting the fat cats.
Sure.
But they also give nods to the different groups whether you're dealing with a kind of Bridget who's a suffragette almost.
Yep. I mean,
although not
it's a pretty
quite
clear
that, but
parallel,
it's
though.
that style of politics. Or you have kind of like Tony, who's more doing it out of wanting to sleep with Bridget than having that, but that kind of working class mentality. But you also have a kind of crap politicians, like all of these different elements of actual history in there, when they might have just well been talking about Eugene Debs and Mother Jones in certain aspects. So
sure. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, of course, I remember seeing this film as a kid, but it's been a very long time, and it's much deeper. And like, it has those little like nods and not even nods and winks. They're just like well-researched little inclusions that round out the world of the actual, immigration experience or in and around that time, and the various facets and like sort of communities and cultures thereof. So yeah, I think it's fascinating that, and they certainly, maybe this is style a bit, but they sneak in a lot of shit, if you will, on the radar that as a kid you would never understand it and not get. But it's very cleverly done, and like it's not just there just to be there; it's there to have a message as well.
I also want to bring up a quick point, a pro-American point here, where so I like how they kind of take a look at the ideal of what America was supposed to represent, and the reality of what people face when they showed up here. That the promises, the illusion of what America wasn't up to it. But that concept of never say die, and that we support those who fight for the thing, I think comes really well. So it is, although even a realistic portrait would still be uplifting about
it still
what
has a
was
positive resonance.
Yeah, it's still capturing an ideal of what America should be versus a reality, but something that should be striven for.
Yeah, it is great. But and another theme for sure. I love how that is hammered home by a French pigeon building the Statue of Liberty, right?
Course,
like,
yes.
It is like all kinds of like this, like very much deeper commentary than any child is going to get. But like, you have this other immigrant who's been there a while, but he's there like making this symbol of freedom, of American freedom, right? It's the original copper like Statue of Liberty. I don't know. There's like a lot of really cool like little bits of history thrown into this that
That's
think really like take it above and beyond a lot of other cartoons that came out around the time.
This is going to be really weird, but they show there's humans in this. So I imagine humans actually building the Statue of Liberty and not a pigeon. I kind of hope that in reality there was a pigeon who was perched on the Statue of Liberty who thought it was building it.
Yeah. Of course, they're all parallels. Like, I said that too. Like, this is a funny thing. Early on, I was like, oh, there's humans as well. Like, I thought it was just basically a mouse-centric world, if you will. But they are on the ship with humans. Humans are being persecuted by the Cossacks, like at the beginning and all that. Yeah. So yeah. So, but anyway,
Cossacks with Cossack cats.
Yes, exactly.
They put little fezzes on the cats.
And everything, yeah.
What do you think sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say all that to say, I think themes are very strong, still resonant, and perhaps again more relevant than you think they are for a 30-year-old or more movie at this point.
Yeah, completely agree. What do you think it means that the fish are stupid and can't talk?
Who they represent? I don't know, man.
No, they don't represent anybody. They're just fish. How come the fish are just fish? All the other animals are
because you can't
people.
You can't. It's much harder to anthropomorphize fish than it is mice. I guess. Like, I don't know.
Let me introduce you to a little movie called Finding Nemo, my friend.
Yeah. I get it, but that was again 30 years later.
Yeah, Little Mermaid.
That's right? Half people, half fish.
That's true. It's true.
All I'm saying
I
is,
would say Sebastian the Crab had a lot to say.
Right. Maybe it's just because we're more genetically closely related to mice and rats than we are
down there on the ocean floor.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I think that's ones all around, right?
Yes. So anyway, on to me with the antagonist. So where in Mouse had specifically the cats be the Germans and the Nazis, the cats here represent a more abstract concept. It's any group that's attempting to oppress another group. Yeah. They're not necessarily anti-Semitic in that you have Irish, Italian, and all of that. It's just, I feel in general, any group that you see them as Cossacks, you see them as street gangs, you see them as con and as everything, and I think that it's anyone willing to, or the mob,
exploit the incoming immigrants.
Yes, but it's any group that uses power inappropriately and the oppression of others. And I think that it works really well as a very good abstract metaphor.
I remember being terrified of the cats in this movie when I was a kid, and watching it again, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, because they're pretty, like, they're
intense.
Don Bluth, in his making of this movie, wanted those cats to be scary as hell to kids, because he knew this was going to be a kids' movie, and I think a very good job was done paying attention to that aspect of things.
Even scarier though was the sea,
the waves. Yeah, you noticed that?
Yeah,
also personified.
Very Fantasia-esque.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But no, I mean, I think you guys are right. I think I like that angle, and it works because of that. Like, I don't want to necessarily directly compare it to Mouse, but you also sort of can't avoid it completely. But nevertheless, taken as is, like the force, the societal pressures and oppressions that they represent, I think are effective to any portion of the segment, if you will, of the immigrant group of whatever mice they are at any given time. They are all oppressed by this other all-encompassing force.
So eventually the mice will evolve into cats when they get power. I assume that's what happens.
Well, I thought it was going to be so, like, you know how like William T. Ratley or whatever is actually obviously a cat impersonating a rat too.
Warren T. Listen, his name is Warren T.
Warren
T. Rat.
Rat, whatever it is, man.
Or a cat, rat or cat. Warren T. One of those.
Anyways, like the obvious end result is going to be a mouse impersonating a cat to control them. But anyways, from behind the scenes. But no, all of that aside, I do think the themes work extremely well and are in tandem with the antagonist at the same time. So they both sort of go hand in hand and both get a really strong one.
And I know we mentioned Mouse a couple times, and I think it's germane to point out that Art Spiegelman was really concerned that they were ripping him off of this movie.
Well, actually, he forced the publication of the second part.
He tried to get it out early, right? Yeah. To beat American Tail out, because he was worried that people were going to think that he was ripping them off when he had been writing this thing forever.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it still works. I think, good.
Sorry. Good. Oh, I was going to say, it is interesting to look at the antagonist in terms of the cats, especially Warren T, specifically as the head of the gang, right? And his, in the same way that in Mouse they wear the masks to pretend that they are cats or pigs, I guess, Polish people. In this, he wears the mask to pretend that he's one of the common people, or the mice. And I don't know. I thought that was really fascinating. That he gets all dressed up to go be among the mice so that he can take advantage of them. And I don't know.
No, it works really well, like I said, on all those fronts. So, and perhaps even more so, of course, now viewing it as an adult 30 years later.
And how rooted in history it is. So, anyway, Scott, talk about Mr. Moskowitz.
Five-Volt Moskowitz. Yeah, so I think I was concerned that, again, I remembered certain portions of this film, but not a lot of them. But I was concerned that he would get grading, as you mentioned, I think, earlier, Steve-O. But I think he's still a relatable character, well portrayed. And yeah, his journey is more harrowing than you think than I remember it being. And it's quite, I can see it being quite scary for a 7-8-year-old, roughly, at the age of ostensibly what this movie's demographic aimed at. So I think he still serves a good role. And of course, you follow almost like vignettes, as he bounces along the underbelly, meets this and that character, and gets either scammed or taken along, or at least in terms of Tony's,
or sold into a sweatshop.
Yeah, or taken under the wing, or at least to some degree, by various other characters who are sometimes generally trying to help him and sometimes trying to take advantage of him, and that's just the experience. So either way, I think he holds the movie together quite well. And you follow his journey. It all makes sense. It's all very nicely paced, if we didn't mention that in plot. So, yeah, I think Five-O is a really good character and a very good protagonist, and everything else that revolves around him works quite well, which we'll get to in a second. So I'm giving him a 1.
I enjoy the fact that even though he retains his youth throughout this, he doesn't. He does grow as a character.
Sure, exactly.
It.
He has
becomes,
very nice arc.
he has a hero's arc in a lot of ways, in that he saves the day by taking the fire to release the robot.
The
Trojan Warhorse cat.
hold on, what's the
the Mouse of Miskovitz or something like that.
The Mouse of Minsk.
Minsk, yeah.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he still is his hero's moments, and it's a very emotionally earned journey. That it's moving when he reunites with his family, and they do so many close calls in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's dripping with dramatic irony because they keep crossing paths like unbeknownst, or like he'll be like 2 floors above or below like his actual family or whatever. So yeah, it's really nicely done in terms of that as well. I agree.
Yeah, so like the their ultimate weapon, I was trying to think of the word for it, and it popped in my head 1 second after you started talking again, but I didn't want to cut you off. It's almost like a golem, right? Like taken from the old country, brought into America.
Sure, and constructed and given life to destroy their enemies.
That's an old tale as well, but like I think really well redone in this case, Yep. But yeah, I think that Fievel does a terrific job as the protagonist. He provides a point of I don't know what the right word is. Like he just is solidly himself throughout until that moment where he has to like doubt himself right at the end. Like I love that a couple times this gets like fairly dark, or like towards the end when he's really doubting himself after like when he loses his family and he's like sleeping in the like homeless community with all the other homeless kids. And one of them's like, "You're trash, you're garbage." He's like, "You're right, I am." It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. You're right. Like
this is what I do. Like I was like, "This is what I deserve," or something like that. Like,
there are many dark moments like that. Though. You're absolutely right.
If you were worthy, your family would come find you. Yeah. That is a very impactful thing for kids to hear.
Right.
Like,
anybody gets through that, but you're right. Like, there's a lot of highs and lows emotionally, and I think they're all sine wave themselves quite well balanced out, like I said. So, and you know, as with him as the focal point.
So it's ones all around.
I gotta give him a 1.
Okay, Mr. Mosi, tell about the supporting characters.
Supporting. All right. Well, you got the rest of the family.
All 30 of them.
Papa, Mama, Tanya,
and Baby Mouse,
and Baby, who doesn't do anything except for be a baby.
Yeah.
But I love. One of my strongest memories of this movie is Papa, right? His father, with that beard and like just the violin, and he's sings the "There Are No Cats in America" song like that, which is I think the first song in the movie, right?
It's one of the first, if not.
They don't. I don't think they sing any songs until they get out of Europe, which is an important thing as well. Right. I think
that is definitely true, and they sing it on the boat like halfway through the journey, I believe.
Yeah. So the family and Mama is an important touchstone too, but I think Papa is really the one that they focus on. I'm going to leave a lot of these to you guys, but there's so many that I might as well name a couple more.
Go for it.
Like I was saying earlier, I like Gussie Mouseheimer, I think is her name. Like she's like the rich mouse from uptown who like comes in like she's gonna be way too good for everybody, and then ends up like rolling up her sleeves and doing work, which is nice to see. And then I liked Henri. I'm going to name one more character. Henri the pigeon. He has one of the more memorable songs in the movie, and he's just like a bastion of optimism where sometimes this movie can feel a little bit dark and like pessimistic. So that's kind of nice. All right, I'll leave the rest of you.
Especially I actually want to make 2 comments about that. Henri is great because he bookends Fievel's experience in America.
Yeah, true.
And I think that works for the optimistic message that he has to say. The fact that he comes back at the end works really well for me. But I love the path that the father goes through in that he feels guilty for Fievel, even though it's Fievel's fault. What are you doing climbing up on a deck during a storm? But he blames himself for the loss of Fievel and is emotionally wrecked for a majority of the film until he realizes that his son's still alive. And his transition, I think, is very powerful, of actually a good demonstration of depression. He doesn't even play the violin much anymore, even though that's what Fievel was searching for the majority of the thing.
Or was going to be, sure.
And overall, just the cast. The thing is, I'm going to say one complaint though. Dom DeLuise, I don't see the appeal. I think that he was distracting. I feel that, especially when they all unite at the end, he just steps up and be like, I have friends now. I'm like, no, it's not about you, Dom DeLuise.
It's always about Dom DeLuise.
let this emotion breathe a little.
You don't even see Tiger. You just see Dom DeLuise's face on a cat's body.
That way it looks like in real life. But no, like, I mean, I see. I mean, like, but I'm like, I guess my somewhat rebuttal is like, of course you need a comedic character in a film such as this nature, and one that, like, not all cats are bad, so like he serves to fulfill that role, right? So like, it's all fine. But yeah, I think every character has their own mini arc to a degree, and like, while they may be small slices of vignettes, like Bridget's a little, like, again, her thread, Tony's thread, and the whole, like, all the mice who are involved, if you will, in the rally to come together to build the golem and so forth. Any named mouse character, I would say, was fleshed out well enough, and again, was the parallel analogy to the immigrant experience. So I think they all worked quite well as a whole. And so I'm giving them all a 1, even though I think I like Dom DeLuise better than you. It's still fine. It's totally fine.
It's a little too much.
All right. Down in the Dom. Turn it down.
Dom DeLuise is too much for you. All right. I did like that character, but I can understand how it might be a little bit much. But yeah, like, I think you guys are absolutely right. I think we named most of the important characters. Honest John, I don't think we mentioned yet.
Yeah, well, we mentioned him before, but you're right.
Oh, the Irish stereotype. Actually,
Junk Irish election rigger.
There is something. I don't know how to feel about the fact that there are, especially that Irish stereotype during the "There Are No Cats in America"
The original song. Yeah,
I don't know. Occasionally, it gets a little.
It's approaching, like,
oh no, all this shit is offensive.
No, like, see, I don't think it is, like, not as much as you might say. Like, I don't want to say it's harmless, but it's not as offensive as I thought it was going to be. Like, again, without having much recollection of it, like, it's not that bad.
I believe I was waiting for it to cross the line, and it never does.
Exactly,
but it's always like,
sure, it might teeter on the edge.
Is this going to get?
Yeah. So I watched this yesterday, and I believe the way I described it to you guys when I was like, "Oh yeah, I saw this for the first time in a long time." I was like, there are a few scenes that were like,
sure.
So
quite sketchy.
There were definitely those, but yeah. I mean, it's whatever. I still think it's a good movie. There are a couple of stereotypes that are
certainly a bit outdated on some fronts.
Approaching the
line. I'm not going to argue that.
Sure. But regardless, supporting characters getting a 1 from me.
Right.
Okay, on with me to dialogue. I think it's good for a kids movie.
And now go.
Passing it off.
All right. So, like, I'm going to give it credit because there are less songs than I thought. Like, I thought, in my mind, again, like, the haziness of my recollections of this film is that it was almost all a musical, like singing. There are only about 3 or 4 songs, and even up, like, maybe 7 then tops, if that. And 2 of them are basically callbacks, like reprisals of each other. So, like, I think it's fine. There's still some parts that made me chuckle, and when it got dark and serious, they were impactful as well. I think the script itself is damn solid, and it was all very highly voice acted. So I can't really give it any faults. I'll give it a very solid 1. There's nothing amazing about it, but neither was there that, like, at least in terms of dialogue, Steve-O, like, for the most part. So that's how I feel about it. Good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. I'm like yourself, Ian. I'm like on the fence about this because it's fine.
Yeah.
It's finologue. But it's not like.
But I get you.
It's there's nothing that's like standout about it. There are definitely other parts of this movie that are much better than the dialogue.
Sure.
But that's by design because it's a kids movie and it needs to be somewhat simple in terms of the way that it's structured and things like that. So I don't know. I don't think it's bad by any means, and I think in that case I'm going to give it a 1. But I could completely understand if anybody's 0.
I'm going to give it a 1 for, and I mentioned this earlier, or someone mentioned it earlier, the inclusion of historical facts sprinkled throughout the dialogue. They didn't need to have it in there. In fact,
hang on for you.
I think a lot of the modern kids movies, although I have no right to say this because I have no proof of that, would, I think, be hesitant to add that level of detail in it. And I know Don Bluth was very bold with his choices of kid movies. So yeah, I have to, because here's the thing, like, I've seen a couple of like animated kids recently, and they'll do like referential humor. But this wasn't modern referential humor. This was historical referential. Yeah.
What's your favorite novel? The Brothers Caramouse.
Yeah.
There's a piece of dialogue that is amazing, and what to prove what you just said.
Yeah,
I think he just straight up says Brothers Karamazov.
I think it's a pun on mouse, of course, but like it's very close.
Yeah.
It's got to be a pun.
Yeah, they bring up Dostoevsky,
but it's still a reference. Yeah.
But if you want to see, just to give a quick little thing, if you want to see a kids movie that like is this level of like detail about something, go check out Coco.
Okay, I heard
just a little ad for Coco.
All right,
it's fucking great. But anyway,
I'm willing to be proven wrong with my generalizations. Scott, style.
Yeah, it holds up very, very well. Like it's that I actually sort of prefer, like I guess the quote vintage sort of animation style at this point. Yeah, of course it's not your Pixar. It's not like your fucking other big studios who are doing like the CGI like digital animation. It's not even like Toy Story 1, but I like the vintage feel of it, and it still looks great. Even so, even if it's like maybe a little faded, a little washed out just because of the nature of it. I think we watched it in HD, so you could tell like sometimes when it's just a little not as crisp, but it does, to me at least, because it still looks great, and I just have an affinity for that style of like that era of animation. So I'm going to give it a 1. The songs are well written. Like maybe that's part of dialogue, but I think it sort of flows in, like I just mentioned. So yeah, I think it all works for me. And yeah, like the things like you mentioned, Steve, the waves, or one of you mentioned the monstrous faces on the waves and the cats themselves and so forth. So
yeah, I think you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm giving it a 1. Very strong 1.
So we have Disney, we have Pixar, we have Don Bluth. You actually know the name of the person who created these works, and he did phenomenal work. I mean, he has misses, but he's remembered
he's a legend
for his animation. And he did Land Before Time too as well, right? Yeah. And I like, and this is a great example of the work he can do. And so everything you just said there.
Yeah, I think style is one of the strongest things that holds up in general. So
I can't hear you.
Steve-O, you're muted or something.
The stylist is fantastic. Sorry about that. The stylist is fantastic. It's really good. Don Bluth, as you were just saying, Sleeping Beauty, Sword in the Stone, Robin Hood, Winnie the Pooh, Pete's Dragon, Fox and the Hound, Secret of Nim, which is a fucking amazing movie.
Yeah, it is.
Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Rockadoodle, Thumbelina, Troll in Central Park. So like his last
Troll in Central Park is
underrated.
I think it's Dom DeLuise as well.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
and his last one I think his last big animated one was Titan AE, which is a completely different style for him.
Sure.
But yeah, like he's a guy who's always pushing boundaries and doing really good stuff, and anything that he does, you can never. It'd be hard to take away points for style,
Yeah, man. Exactly.
No, and on top of that, the songwriting I think is really good in this.
Yeah.
They're very, very memorable songs, especially for kids. I remember pretty much every song that was in this, and like started singing them a few times as I was watching. So yeah, I got to give style a very strong 1 as well.
I'm with you.
Okay, and Steve-O,
Bring it home.
finish off. Good
Yeah.
recommendation.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna give this a 10. Looks like so. I give it a recommendation. I think that this is a movie that deserved to be watched when you're a child. You know, when you're pretty young,
10 or so. Yeah. When you're 5's age, even though it's unspecified, but it's roughly that. I would guess.
I think. Excuse me.
Double kill.
I think that's the first time that I saw
Rude.
it. Was I'm sorry. Was so like
Was
this
around
came
that
out.
age.
This movie came out when I was 3 years old in 1986, and or probably even less than 3 because I was born in November. But it's a movie that I probably saw for the first time when I was like 5 or 6, and
About the
has
same for me.
always stuck with me since then. And yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're younger. But you know, if you're older and you've never seen it, check it out. It's a good watch, and it's a little bit deeper than you think it's going to be.
Exactly.
I was actually looking up reviews of this on Rotten Tomatoes, or at least what people thought of it. And a lot of people actually complain that about its darkness and how it might be a little too intense for kids. And I say that, yes, for younger children, I might hesitate, though I'm I guess, less worried about that than other parents would be. But I think that it is a well-structured and historical for like a slightly older kid. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 4. And also, if you're into history, it's a neat little look into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely recommending it. I think you can do, like I said, I don't want to overuse sneaking crap under the radar, but I think it's the best description of that. You can appreciate it as a kid. No, yeah, it gets a little dark, a little intense, but I think that's kind of a good thing, like about it. Like that has that edge to it, which not all films of this nature have, especially back in '86. And as an adult, you can also get a lot of, like you said, Steve-O, it's much deeper than it seems to, might assume on the surface. So I think, you know, if you have kids, watch it with your kids. Like, I don't know, but it still holds up for sure, like very, very well, and is still worth a watch and is relevant. I might make a case for maybe putting it on the AFI if we wanted to expand upon that later. But I'm just saying, I think it's an important, relevant cultural film that still stands the test of time.
I think maybe we should watch Land Before Time as well to see how that has held
Fair
up. Anyway, I'll give out the scores. Steven, you gave it a perfect score. And we both give it 9s, giving it 9.3 overall, which I think is appropriate for what a Steven Spielberg and Don Bluth co-production should look like, be rated.
I agree. 9.3
because this is actually Steven Spielberg when he was getting into his great period of working with animation. Whether it's Animaniacs or anything like that, Piggy and the Brain.
Well, this is well before that stuff.
Yeah, but like I think
this is like the early iteration of that.
Yeah, I think this is when his transition was happening.
There were even references that I looked it up real quick that in Animaniacs they had references to a few of them, at least to American Tail.
Nice.
So yeah, a 9.3 I think is damn solid. It earned it for sure.
Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, and with here with Scott Thurler.
And I'm gonna go organize a revolution against cats myself right now.
Yeah, and Stephen are mostly self-quarantined.
As far as I know, there are no cats in this apartment.
Very good.
And no plague.
But your streets are paved with cheese.
Yes. I've been putting cheese down on the floor every chance I get.
This neighborhood is delicious. Anyway, thanks for joining us.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Manzer. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?